Next comes the concept of interstate trade and commerce. So we have after GST, it has been revolutionized, that interstate trade and commerce has become a revolutionary concept. Okay, with respect to taxation, we have e-way bill. So the movement of goods has become very easy, and logistics is also very easy. So anti-profiting bill is also there, that has also made interstate trade easy. So interstate trade and commerce. So which article deals with interstate trade and commerce? So article 301 to 307, not very important from examination perspective, but have a brief idea. You need not go in detail with respect to these articles. Okay. So with respect to interstate trade and commerce, so Parliament can impose restrictions of freedom of trade, interstate trade, intercourse between the state in the public interest. So in public interest, so public interest means suppose there are drugs, narcotic drugs, so that can be prohibited by the union government, union parliament, saying in the interstate commerce that cannot be traded. That is said by the, if the parliament says that can be prohibited. So even the state government can impose restriction on interstate commerce, interstate trade and commerce, but that has to be reasonable. So, and also the restriction has to be reasonable. That is the first condition. Second condition is the state should not discriminate between among the states. So suppose Karnataka imposes a restriction on some particular product trade coming from Tamil Nadu. The same restriction has to be implemented or enforced on that particular product if it comes from Maharashtra also, if it comes from Telangana also, if it comes from Andhra Pradesh also. So there should be no discrimination, and also the restriction on the product should be reasonable. There should not be unreasonable restrictions. So next comes the concept of zonal councils. So already said there are zonal councils. So who heads these zonal councils? So is there any constitutional backing for these zonal councils? So we don't have any constitutional backing for zonal councils. What we have? We have statutory backing. What is the statutory backing? Interstate State Reorganization Act 1956. State Reorganization Act 1956, via which many states were formed in India. State Reorganization Act 1956. Based on whose recommendation this act was enacted? What was the constitutional amendment? Constitutional amendment is 7th Constitutional Amendment. Sorry. Recommendation based on Fazl Ali Commission. So I have discussed it in the first class on citizenship. Sorry, on states, evolution of states in India. So zonal councils. Who heads the zonal council? Home Minister of the central government heads the zonal council. Chief Minister of all the states in the zone. Chief Minister of all the states in the zone are members. So, and also 2 other ministers from the state can be members. So zonal councils, what is the use of zonal councils? To achieve emotional integration of the country. So India is a multicultural country. So we have various race, religion, castes. We have various languages, various cultures, various dishes, various kinds of dressing, various kinds of people, various level of education, various religions, so belonging to various climates. So there is India is a multicultural pluralistic country. So in order to achieve a emotional integration, to build a country not only physically but emotionally. So this particular councils are important. So reach state consciousness. So any separatism is tried to be curbed by this interstate council. It also helps in enabling ease of trade and other development projects. We have how many councils do we have? We have 5 councils, 5 plus 1. So we have Northern Zonal Council headquartered in New Delhi, Central Zonal Council Allahabad, Eastern Zonal Council Kolkata, Western Zonal Council Mumbai, Southern Zonal Council Chennai. So these are the zonal councils. So we have Northeast, also we have Northeast Zonal Councils. So related articles, which is a ritual after every chapter. So we have articles starting 261. So we have article 261, which is not so important, but article 262 and 263 are important. Then comes article from 301 to 307, not so important. So next we will move to the next chapter, emergency. So very important. Direct questions can be asked from the chapter on emergency. Okay. So what is emergency? So right now we are the country is proceeding in a normal fashion. There is no abnormalcy. So the states are functioning normally, the society is functioning normally, the economy is functioning normally, and there is no threats, there is no violence. So there are minimal violence here and there, which is taken care by the law and order machinery. However, overall there is no threat to the functioning of the country, right? So if there is any threat, if the normal functioning is hampered, so to a great extent, then we consider such a situation is apt for invoking emergency. So what are the articles? So the articles from 352 to 360, 352 to 360 speaks on emergency. What is the part? The part is 18, part 18 of the Constitution. The part number is not so important. However, the emergency articles are important. So what is the rationale behind imposing including the provisions of emergency in the Indian Constitution? So there was various debate. So what did Dr. Ambedkar ji, who is the chief architect of Indian Constitution and also the chairman of drafting committee, say about the inclusion of emergency provisions in Constitution? So here is the words of Dr. Ambedkar. All federal systems, including America, are placed in a tight mold of federalism. No matter what the circumstances, it cannot change its form and shape. It can never be unitary. On the other hand, the Constitution of India can be both unitary as a federal according to the requirements of time and circumstances. Normal times, it is framed to work as a federal system, but in times of an emergency, it is designed to make it work as though it was a unitary system. So these are the words said by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. What did Ambedkar ji mean to say here? So we are generally working as a federal system. I already said what do you mean by federation. So during normal times we are a federation. However, during extraordinary times there is a necessity for the country to work in a unitary fashion. That is why we have the provision of emergency. So we have 3 types of emergency. One is national emergency, second one is state emergency, which is also called as president rule or constitutional emergency. Third, we have the concept of financial emergency. So first comes the concept of national emergency. So under Article 352. So what is national emergency all about? So what are the grounds of declaration? So national emergency can be declared on three grounds. One is war, second is external aggression, third is armed rebellion. So you all know what is meant by war. External aggression means what? Suppose Pakistan or China conducts or invades into India, they aggress against Indian boundaries. That can be considered as external emergency. During 1962, when China aggressed against India, there was a declaration of emergency. Similarly, in 1965, during the war with Pakistan. Okay. So also we have armed rebellion. Armed rebellion means within the boundary of India there is a rebellion. So if there is a condition of civil war satisfying the condition of armed rebellion, there should be use of arms in that rebellion, then only an emergency can be declared. Earlier, before 44th Amendment Act, during the tenure of Morarji Desai ji, there was a condition called internal disturbance. So under internal disturbance, emergency was imposed by Srimati Indira Gandhi. However, this provision was deleted by Sri Morarji Desai government in 44th Amendment Act and said that no, you cannot impose based on internal disturbance, but only based on armed rebellion. That was included in the 44th Amendment Act. Okay, so also 38th Amendment Act. 38th Amendment Act 1975. It was said that emergency is immune from judicial review. So if emergency is imposed, judiciary cannot do anything. That was said by 35th Amendment Act. 38th Amendment Act. However, the amendment number is not important. However, this was overruled in Minerva Mills case. In Minerva Mills case, they said that no imposition of emergency can be subjected to judicial review. Judiciary can revoke the emergency. So parliamentary approval and duration. So Parliament has to approve the emergency. So earlier what used to happen, within imposition of emergency, within 2 months, they have to, the houses of both the Parliament have to approve the proclamation of emergency. So when it comes to emergency, the word called proclamation is very, very important. You cannot say emergency was enacted. So proclamation of emergency is the word. So originally the 2 months was allowed for approval by the Parliament. However, later on 44th Amendment Act, the approval of Parliament was reduced to 1 month. So the approval has to be done by 2/3 majority, that is special majority. I already told you on the chapter of amendment what is meant by special majority. With special majority, parliamentary approval has to be done for national emergency within 1 month. That is 2/3 of majority plus total majority and 2/3 majority. Both has to be satisfied in order to emergency to continue. Once the parliament approves the imposition of emergency, the emergency stands valid for 6 months at a time. Okay. So earlier what was the time period? So earlier there was no time period. Once approved by the parliament, there was no time period. It can be extended indefinitely. However, in 44th Amendment Act, it made so that once the approval is done, the emergency can run for 6 months. Post 6 months, it has to be again. The parliament has to convene and pass a bill or resolution for continuance of emergency. Okay. So earlier, one more thing is, earlier there was no requirement of special majority within 2 months. If simple majority approves, the simple majority means what? Those who present and voting. Those, suppose 300 members are present, if 150 vote for approval of the resolution, emergency can be extended indefinitely. Now it is special majority. Revocation of proclamation. So how proclamation of emergency can be revoked? So revocation can be done by 2 ways. One, the president can himself take back the proclamation of emergency. So the other way is the parliament, the Lok Sabha, so in particular, can pass a resolution with simple majority. You know what is simple majority? So with simple majority, if the Lok Sabha passes a resolution with simple majority, then parliament, then the emergency stands revoked. Okay. So what are the effects of national emergency? So there are many effects. So effects on central state relations. So what are the effect between center and state relations? So what is the effect on executive relation? During a national emergency, the executive power of center extends to the executive power of states as well. Center can give any direction to state in any matter. Okay, that is the executive relation. Next comes legislative relation. Legislative relation means what? So the parliament can enact laws even in the state subject list. So state subject list, any matter is there, so the parliament can enact a law during emergency. So does this law valid forever? No, this law is valid only after 6 months. So once the emergency ceases to operate, within 6 months the law also ceases to operate. So this is what is meant by legislative effect during national emergency. The law is valid only for 6 months post the emergency ends. Next comes the financial relation. So the president, here what will happen? The president can modify the distribution of power. So Finance Commission says distribution of power during emergency, this distribution can be varied by the president. Okay. Next comes effect on the life of Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly. So what will happen on the effect of Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly? So life of Lok Sabha can be extended beyond 5 years. So beyond its normal term for 1 year at a time. So the normal term is 5 years. Beyond 5 years, the length of Lok Sabha can be extended. During 1975 emergency, Lok Sabha was extended twice. So twice, 2 years, the government had extended the tenure of Lok Sabha. Okay. So, however, this extension cannot continue beyond 6 months once the emergency ceases. So, the Lok Sabha can be extended 1 year at a time. The tenure of Lok Sabha can be extended 1 year at a time. However, once the emergency ceases to operate, so emergency ends, within 6 months, the Lok Sabha will also end. So that extension cannot be granted forever. Okay. Next comes effect on fundamental rights. This is a most important part. So what is the effect on fundamental rights? What is the effect on fundamental rights? So fundamental rights, not all fundamental rights stand suspended once the emergency is invoked. However, Article 19, 6 acts. We have discussed this during the concept of fundamental rights. Article 19 immediately, once the emergency is invoked, Article 19 immediately stands suspended. So you cannot go to court saying my freedom of speech and expression is threatened, because once emergency is there, Article 19 is not there. Okay. So that is with respect to Article 19. So suspension of other fundamental rights. So what about other fundamental rights? With respect to other fundamental rights, President has to mention what are the rights which cannot be executed. Suppose President mentions Article 25 cannot have effect during the emergency. So that particular act, that particular fundamental rights stand suspended. Then what is the difference between this and that? Article 19 and that particular suspension. So here this is a automatic suspension. President's approval, president's resolution or rule is not required to suspend Article 19. It is a automatical suspension. However, the suspension of any other fundamental right requires president's consent. However, the Article 20 and 21 cannot be suspended even by the president. This caveat was added by caveat was added by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. So next we have the concept of distinction between Article 358 and 359. So 358, what it says about Article 19, suspension automatically. However, so 350, it is confined only to Article 19, whereas 359 deals with any other article. So it deals with any other fundamental right whose enactment is suspended by presidential order. If president says, suppose Article 30 cannot be suspended, cannot be enforced, so that particular article stands suspended. Okay. Similarly, so this is with respect to Article 19, this is with respect to any other fundamental right. So declarations made so far. So there have been three national emergencies till now. What were the three? So one is during 1962 Chinese external aggression, not war. So we need not fight a war actually. So China came, invaded from Arunachal Pradesh and also western sector. They unilaterally withdrew. India did not fight a war with China. It was an external incursion, external aggression. So 1971 Bangladesh War of Independence, there was a external aggression by Pakistan. So Pakistan War, 1971 Bangladesh War of Liberation, there was a external aggression. Next comes 1975 national emergency, internal disturbance. So internal disturbance, there was a invoked by Srimati Indira Gandhi ji. Okay. Due to this, she lost election later on, because of which Janata Party headed by Morarji Desai came to power. There is one more change by 44th Amendment Act. Earlier what used to happen? So the Prime Minister can alone recommend the President saying that please impose the emergency and President will impose the emergency. Whereas now by 44th Amendment Act, the cabinet should give in writing to the President that please impose emergency. So President alone cannot, by his dictatorship, say the President please impose emergency. No. Now cabinet has to give it in writing. Why this was made by 44th Amendment? So you know that in 1975, Indira Gandhi ji overnight said to the President, impose emergency, and the President imposed the emergency. Who was the President at that time? That is for you to find out. So I can also say, but what is the work you are going to do? Okay. So now we have a safeguard which says that cabinet has to give it in writing. Okay. So this is all about national emergency. If you remember this much, it is more than sufficient. Tomorrow I am going to discuss with President rule, which is another type of emergency under Article 356. So this is all for today. Thank you so much for your patience. Hope you found the class knowledgeable. Actually, it is very, very important from the polity perspective. Thank you so much and have a great time. Take care of yourself and Jai Hind. Namaste.